We have some breaking news out of Kentucky, which is State Representative Charles Booker is forming an exploratory committee to challenge Senator Mitch McConnell in the 2020 November elections in Kentucky. Now, in order to get to the general election against McConnell, he'll have to first get through Amy McGrath, who is a Marine pilot who ran in 2018 against Andy Barr in a Lexington congressional seat. Booker is going to try to run to the left of Amy McGrath. Now, McGrath in 2018 was a kind of DCCC-backed candidate who ran a center or center-right campaign against Barr and ended up losing in a not terribly close race in the end. What ultimately did her in was that at a fundraiser in Boston, she was caught in a private audio saying that she was actually the most progressive person in Kentucky, far more liberal than anybody down there. As you can imagine, that kind of comment doesn't play well at home. Not that there's something wrong with being progressive in Kentucky, but that you think that you're trying to pull one over and that you're telling people in Boston that actually, you're more like them than you are like people in Kentucky. Now, Charles Booker is in a much different situation. He grew up on the west side of Louisville in one of the poorest zip codes in the state. Both of his parents went on to become Baptist ministers, but he grew up extremely poor. He's still struggling despite having won a state representative seat in 2018. He was one of the youngest people elected to the Kentucky State Legislature at the age of 35, and he also lives with diabetes, and so he understands the cost of health care, which can cost him as much as $1,000 a month, he told me. And it's a story that he tells on the campaign trail. Several years ago, he decided not to fill his insulin prescription to try to save money, and he thought he was going to be okay for a couple days. He wasn't. His body started seizing up, and he almost died as a result of it. That's a story that's going to resonate with a lot of people around Kentucky, and it's a story that he can tell that Mitch McConnell certainly can't. He's going to try to take that to the coal fields of East Kentucky, a place that recently rejected Matt Bevin, the Republican governor. Republicans have argued that Democrats shouldn't count on being able to beat McConnell just because Bevin lost. And to be sure, there's some truth to that. Bevin was uniquely unpopular. There was a libertarian in the race who took almost 30,000 votes. But it also shows that some people in Kentucky are willing to split their ticket. Republicans won statewide across the seat except for Bevin, and so Booker is arguing that look, some people in coal country might vote for Trump at the top of the ticket, but McConnell doesn't necessarily resonate with them. Now, all political eyes in the state are currently on liberal sports radio host Matt Jones, who we talked about last week here at Rebel HQ. You can scroll down, you can find that video. It's not entirely clear whether or not he's going to run. Recently the Kentucky Republicans used the FEC to get him kicked off of his popular radio show, and in reaction, the hashtag Free Matt Jones began trending not just in Kentucky but nationally, showing how much it may have backfired against McConnell. But again, it's still not entirely clear whether or not Matt Jones is going to run. Now, the argument for a Booker candidacy over a Matt Jones one is that while Matt Jones may have a slightly better chance of beating McConnell, Jones isn't necessarily running to try to build the Kentucky Democratic Party. And he's not running on a Green New Deal. He's not running necessarily on Medicare for all. He's not running to kind of build a populist movement that will then be there in 2022, 2024, and going forward. He's singularly focused on trying to take out Mitch McConnell. Now, that certainly has its value to a lot of people. But Booker argues that he too can have some cross appeal to some working class white Democrats in Eastern Kentucky in particular, who are fellow Baptists like himself, fellow working class people like himself. And that it's unfair to stereotype people just along racial lines, and that give Kentuckians a chance to prove what they're made of, and in the process, build the Kentucky Democratic Party in a populist fashion. So even if he doesn't win, it moves forward that way.